As our story begins, we see a boy staring out the window of a bus, probably on the lookout for Truck-kun, when suddenly Train-kun, Truck-kun's cousin, appears and slams into the bus. I guess this is not your typical isekai story. A boy wakes up, confused with what has happened. He seems to remember a life Japan as well as his current life. We learn the boy's name is Rio, and the other life he remembers is that of the boy on the bus. Suddenly, a group of men enter the building, with what appears to be a body bag and a bag of food. They tell Rio to leave so they can sit and enjoy a meal together after a job well done. Rio leaves and begins to walk aimlessly when he is stopped by a group of women looking for a purple-haired girl. Rio tells the group he hasn't seen the girl, but they decide to do a magical search to see if he is telling the truth. While doing the spell, Rio notices a blue aura around himself and the girls, which indicates that he too has magic powers. After completing the search and revealing nothing, the little girl thanks him and hands him a pouch of coins for the trouble. Confused, Rio returns to the building but is attacked by an assassin, an isekai and an isekai. Nice. Just as the assassin is about to attack, time stops, and a pink-haired girl appears teaching him how to unlock his abilities. Rio then swiftly defeated the assassin with a falcon punch and a judo flip. I feel robbed. Rio looks around the room and spots the bag in the corner wiggling, so he goes to investigate. Upon opening the sack, Rio discovers the purple-haired girl, and he frees her, deciding they should escape before another attacker arrives. While fleeing, Rio runs into the same group of girls from before. One of the girls runs up to them and slaps Rio, accusing him of lying earlier, while the older girl pulls a sword on him. Cooler heads prevail, however, and the older girl puts her sword away but demands that Rio go with them to the castle so they can investigate the matter further. In the castle, Rio is tied up and interrogated. By that, I mean mercilessly beaten by the vice-captain, named Charles, who thinks he is the kidnapper. In another part of the castle, Sleeping Beauty, who is actually a princess named Flora, wakes up and explains that Rio actually saved her and demands they release him. Back in the dungeon, Vanessa and Celia arrive and Charles is lectured for his use of force and told to release Rio because he is innocent. Aggravated with the news, Charles storms out of the dungeon. Rio suddenly wakes up in a bed after being healed by Celia, and she informs him that the king has requested an audience with him. In the throne room, King Bertram tells Rio that he has been enrolled in the Royal Academy as thanks for saving his daughter. Rio is grateful but soon realizes that school is going to be impossible because he can't read or write. Celia offers to tutor him in these things but is stunned when she realizes that Rio can easily solve complex math equations, and it is revealed that in his other life Rio was a university student, so this level of math was simple to him. Despite this and his continued improvement, Rio is still bullied in school for his low social status. During a training period in school, the teacher takes an interest in Rio and asks to spar with him. Rio, using his other life's knowledge of sword fighting, agrees and the two begin to spar. The teacher is impressed with his two-handed techniques, which angers the other students who comment that he is still just a peasant. The days roll by and Rio continues to study for the upcoming exams. When it is time to take the exams, Rio is mocked by the other students who think he will fail, but as the exam starts, Rio begins and finishes before anyone else and receives the top mark along with Princess Christina. Despite this, the students just despise him more, thinking he must have cheated somehow. In the following days, Rio is among the few students selected to take part in the knight's competition, which aggravates his fellow students, and they protest, saying he is not a noble and therefore shouldn't be allowed to participate, but the teacher simply tells the students to get over it. The day of the knight's competition arrives, and the students are made to fight against a knight. Rio is set to fight Charles, who was demoted due to his previous encounter with Rio. Charles tells Rio that he plans to beat him mercilessly again, but this time Rio can fight back, and he easily beats Charles. Back in class, Celia has the students practice their magic. Two noble boys brag about their skills and Celia asks them to show her, but the two boys only produce pitiful light balls and Celia shows how much they still have to learn. In the coming days, the class is set to have their practical exam. One of the nobles brags about his plan to finish the exam quickly thanks to the information he bought, and as the group sets out they force Rio to be their pack mule. I can't wait for him to become OP. The group heads through the forest, slaying monsters and making good progress when they come across a cliff. As they try to figure out their next move, they are suddenly confronted by a group of strong monsters who attack them. One of the students is struck in the leg with a spear and begins to scream in pain and falls back, knocking the princess off the cliff. Seeing this, Rio jumps after her and uses his magic to push the princess back up onto the cliff while he falls into the forest below. Nearby, a mysterious man watches the events unfold. Meanwhile, the students manage to defeat the group of monsters and the injured student tries to blame Rio for the princess almost falling to her death. Suddenly a minotaur appears and begins to attack the students. The students try to fight back but their magic has no effect on it. The minotaur tries to grab the princess, who is trying to heal an injured classmate. But his arm is suddenly removed from his body by Rio, who managed to survive the fall. A battle ensues and Rio gets the upper hand. Pun intended. He slays the minotaur. Before the rest of the class has a chance to react, however, Rio disappears into the forest and the mysterious man flies off pleased with what he had seen. Later that night, Celia overhears a noble family discussing what had happened in the forest. The noble family intends to blame Rio for the events in the forest to save their reputation, even though they know it is not his fault. Celia quickly runs away hoping to find Rio before the guards do. Instead, Rio finds her later and informs Celia that he will be leaving the kingdom since he is about to be blamed for everything, which is fine because he wants to go to the village his parents were from anyway. 3 days go by, and Rio manages to reach a bustling market town called Almud in the neighboring kingdom of Galark. The wanted posters hadn't reached the kingdom yet, so Rio was free to walk around and gather the supplies he needed. After a few failed attempts to get the supplies he needed from the market stands, Rio is directed to a merchant guild where he could buy almost anything he would need in bulk at a reasonable price. After shopping around the guild and buying everything he would need for his journey, Rio heads off to his next destination. While walking through the forest, Rio stumbles upon a collapsed child, but as he rushes over to help, the girl wakes up and spits a dart at him. Confused, Rio kicks the girl away but begins to feel the effects of a poison in his system. Rio quickly heals himself as the girl readies herself for a fight, and we see that she is a demi-human. She lunges toward Rio with incredible speed, but Rio manages to dodge her, surprising her with his own speed. After a little back and forth, Rio feels confident that he understands his opponent and decides to sheath his sword. Annoyed at being underestimated, the girl lunges at him, but Rio simply throws her to the ground and pins her down. The girl begins to cry, thinking he is going to kill her and won't listen to reason, so Rio is forced to use a spell on her, knocking her out. Once unconscious, Rio ties the girl up and takes her gear away. While doing so, Rio notices a slave collar on her and promptly removes it, hoping to gain her trust. Her name is Latifa, and it is revealed in a flashback that she is also a victim of Train Kun, and she was reincarnated as a slave to the noble boy, Stuart, who was injured in the practical exam. Latifa wakes up and struggles to get free, but Rio tells her if she tries to escape and get violent, he will have to kill her. He then shows her the slave collar, and she begins to cry with gratitude, thanking him for freeing her. When she is done crying, Rio tells her she is free to do as she wants, but all she wants is to follow him, even holding up the collar and offering to be his slave. Rio rejects the collar, telling her it's creepy, but allows her to join him. The two continue through the forest to the mountains until they reach the border between Galark and the wilds. Rio decides to make camp for the night, cooking spaghetti for the two of them. Latifa gets excited seeing the familiar dish, which surprises Rio, and Latifa explains how she was also reincarnated to this world. The two settle down for the night when suddenly Rio is woken up by Latifa crying. As he checks on her, he notices that she is having a nightmare, so he uses his magic to calm her down. Suddenly, Rio hears a noise outside, and when he goes to investigate, he gets flashbanged by a wolf and finds himself surrounded by a group of female demi-humans. He tries to talk to them, but they won't listen, and when they find Latifa asleep in his tent, they become enraged and attack. Rio wakes up to see the pink-haired girl from before. He tries to figure out who she is, but she doesn't know who she is or why she keeps appearing before him. Rio wakes up chained to a bed, and Latifa hugs him, thankful that he is alive. She starts to scold the other demi-humans, demanding they release him, when an elder demi-human enters and apologizes for their actions, promising to punish them later. In the morning, the elder takes Rio to sit before the demi-human council of elders, which consists of Ursula, Sildra, and Dominic. The council apologizes again for his poor treatment and explains they were just wanting to help a fellow demi-human. Just then, a girl appears, introducing herself as Rios, a spirit of the world tree. She investigates Rio, telling him she feels a strong spirit within him, but Rio claims to have no idea what she is talking about. She persists, concluding that the spirit within him must be one of the 6 great spirits that roamed the land years ago. This realization causes the elders to consider him a saint, and as such they give him the largest house in the village. Latifa greets him at the door and shows him around the house before the group sits to enjoy a meal. After the meal, Sarah asks where everyone will be sleeping and explains that she, Orphan, and Alma will be taking care of Rio and Latifa. Ursula appears confirming Sarah's story, saying it would be good for Latifa to have other demi-humans around. Somewhere else in the wilds we see the mysterious man from before and a young man stealing a wyvern egg, which enraged the wyverns who chase after them. Later that day the village throws a welcoming party for Rio and Latifa, and they all begin to eat and drink their fill. Everyone seems to be enjoying themselves, especially Rio, who has gained a harem with his newfound saint status. So, it is that kind of isekai. Deeper in the forest we see the suspicious man giving the young man a red pill, explaining that eating it will increase his magical energy. The young man foolishly accepts the pill and the egg as the mysterious man disappears into the forest. In the village, Rio tells Latifa that he is going to continue to the village where his parents were from and that she couldn't come with him. However, Latifa refuses to accept this and runs away crying. Dryas feels a disturbance in the forest and informs the elders, who send a team out to investigate. In the forest, the young man is confronted by the team from the village. They try talking to him, but he escapes on his griffin and begins fleeing towards the village. The team flies after him but soon realize they are being followed by a pack of wyverns. Having served his purpose, we see the mysterious man crush a red pill, instantly killing the young man. The young man falls to the ground, probably going splat just like the wyvern egg that lands next to Latifa. A wyvern tries to attack Latifa, but it is stopped by Alma using a wind spell. Alma is no match for the wyvern though, getting beat left and right. Latifa tries to run but is stopped by a fallen tree. Just as she is about to be crushed, Rio appears using an ice spear to push the wyvern back. Rio then proceeds to falcon kick the wyvern, impressing Alma, who has never seen anyone fight a wyvern bare-handed. Rio continues to beat on the wyvern, eventually slaying it, causing the other wyverns to flee. The next morning Rio is ready to leave the village, but they won't allow him to leave empty-handed, giving him gifts and supplies for his journey. He thanks the elders and his harem, asking them to take care of Latifa before flying off. 2 weeks go by, and Rio finally arrives in Yagumo. He spots some girls working in the field and asks them to take him to the village elder. One of the girls, Ruri, agrees to this, saying the village elder was her grandmother. At the elder's house, Rio meets Yuba, who wants to know why he has come to the village. Rio explains that his parents were from the village and that he wanted to learn more about them. Yuba asks the girls to leave and reveals to Rio that his father was her son, making her his grandmother. Yuba then takes Rio to the site where his parents were memorialized and the two pay their respects. The next morning, Rio gets ready to help the village, asking Yuba what needed to be done. Yuba has him prepare breakfast for everyone. Sayo and Shin arrive a short while later and the group enjoy the meal. When they are done, Yuba asks Shin to take Rio hunting with him, and Shin objects, saying Rio will only slow them down, but Yuba assures him that Rio will do well. In the forest, Rio doesn't just keep up, he single-handedly completes the hunt, making Shin feel angry and useless. When they return to the village, Rio decides to build a bath for himself using his magic. After enjoying a long hot bath, Rio comes out to see Ruri and Sayo admiring his bath. As he explains what it is, they are joined by Shin and his friends. Shin becomes angry with Rio for continuing to outshine him, and Rory mocks him for being jealous. The days continue to go by, and Rio continues to help the village. One day Shin is seen yelling at a group of men by the bathhouse. The men had been trying to seduce Ruri and Sayo before Shin came over. The leader of the group becomes angry at Shin for interrupting and begins to choke him. Yuba appears and tells the man to put Shin down and return to their hut. The man releases Shin and his group begins to walk away when they run into Rio. Still upset, the leader tries to trip Rio but ends up tripping himself on Rio's manly calves. That night, Rio walks into the house to find the man from the bathhouse trying to mess with Ruri. Upset with being caught, the man lunges at Rio, but Rio, being a Giga Chad, throws the man to the floor before beating him to a pulp. The next day, the group of men are taken to prison and Rio, Ruri, Shin, and Sayo head off to the capital to enjoy a day off. In the capital, Rio and Shin enjoy a meal before Rio takes Sayo to a store and buys her a hair clip. Suddenly, a woman cries out for help as a man tries to abduct a little girl, but no one is willing to help. The kidnapper tries to flee, but he runs into Rio, who swiftly drops him on his head. Rio returns the girl to the women and he and Sayo quickly leave the village. Back in the village, Rio finds a man named Goki waiting for him. Goki tells Rio that he is actually royalty, and that Goki and his wife used to be his mother's attendings. In a flashback, we see Rio's dad was a warrior for the royal army during the war, and he had saved the princess from being kidnapped. But due to politics, a bounty was placed on his head and the king instructed him to take the princess and flee the kingdom. Back in the present, Goki asks Rio to meet with his grandparents, the king and queen. Rio agrees and meets with them, explaining all that had happened in his life until now, and swearing to get revenge on the man who killed his mother. Rio spends the rest of the day at the castle, sparring with Goki. Later that evening in the village, Yuba finally tells Ruri who Rio actually is, and Ruri becomes embarrassed and apologizes for never being formal with him. But Rio just laughs at her, telling her to relax. Rio then tells them that he will be leaving the village in a year to return to Bertram. A year goes by, and it is time for Rio to leave the village, but before he can leave, he is stopped by Sayo, who confesses her love for him, but Rio's harem is already full, so he apologizes, saying he can't love her back, which breaks her, and he leaves her crying all alone. Rio flies towards the demi-human village in the forest. When he arrives, he has a meeting with the elders, telling them about what had happened in Yagumo and asking if he could stay with them for a few months. The next morning, Rio wakes up to find the pink-haired girl from his dreams sleeping in his bed, and before he can react, his harem barges in. Shocked, they begin questioning Rio, demanding to know who the girl is, and the girl speaks up, saying she is a spirit who is in a contract with Rio. Confused, Rio accepts this and decides to call her Aisha, officially making her a part of his harem. Later, Rio and Aisha meet with the elders, informing them of Aisha's appearance and her lack of a memory. Suddenly, Dryas appears, introducing herself to Aisha, and asks what type of magic she uses. Shockingly, Aisha admits she has control of all magic, which Dryas notes is extremely rare, and she suggests they set up a test for her. In the courtyard, Dryas has Rio and Aisha spar. Despite being new to the world, Aisha matches skills with Rio, deflecting his blows and countering with her own. The battle intensifies, and the two begin to create massive wind pillars, forcing Dryas to stop the fight before they can destroy the village. Realizing she doesn't have control of her power, Dryas decides to welcome Aisha to the village, promising to teach her all she knows. Months later, as Rio prepares to leave for the kingdom, he is gifted a portable house from Dominic, a magic earring from Sildra allowing him to change his appearance, and a teleportation crystal from Ursula allowing him to come back when he pleases. Back in the kingdom, Rio goes to the academy to find Cilia, but when he arrives, he finds her research lab empty, and after charming another teacher, he finds out that she has been engaged to Charles. Upset with the news, Rio flies off to Charles' mansion to confront Cilia. At the mansion, Rio sneaks past the guards into Cilia's room, who is shocked to see him. They sit for some tea, but when Rio asks why she is marrying Charles, she becomes upset, telling him not to get involved and to leave. Unconvinced, Rio and Aisha come up with a plan to rescue Cilia from the biggest mistake of her life. Wedding preparations begin the next day, and after Cilia is dressed, Charles takes her to meet his other 6 wives. Dang. The wives pretend to be nice until Charles leaves, but then they begin to insult Cilia for being younger and hotter than them. Typical. The wedding parade begins, and Cilia is put on a pedestal for the whole city to see. Meanwhile, in the crowd, Rio waits to put his plan into action. Suddenly, Rio dashes from the crowd using magic to stun the front guards. He continues towards Cilia, dodging blasts from the mages and Falcon punching the elite soldiers, and before he can think, Charles feels a punch to his ribs, making him collapse as Rio puts a knife to Cilia's throat. Rio then announces to the crowd that he will be kidnapping Cilia because Charles is a beta. Rio then flies off with Cilia, using Charles as his launch pad. Rio lands in an alley, passing Cilia to Aisha, telling them to escape while he makes a diversion. Rio then leads the guards away, dodging the flying soldiers and beating up any ground soldiers that get in his way. Suddenly, Rio comes face to face with the Knight Captain, who challenges him to a duel. The two face off, and the Knight Captain proves to be a formidable opponent, parrying Rio's strikes and narrowly missing him. The Knight Captain then steps back and begins to charge up his ultimate attack before swinging his sword with all his might, devastating the area. As the smoke clears, Rio is nowhere to be found, leading the captain to assume he is dead. In reality, Rio managed to escape at the last moment, and he meets up with Cilia and Aisha on a mountain. The two have a moment, and Rio promises to make her a part of his harem. Cilia happily accepts, but before they can head out, strange pillars of light begin to appear around them. Aisha becomes concerned and tells Rio that she is going to need his help. That is where the story ends. Thanks for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next recap.